And then also, I wish I wasn't right about this, but a number of weeks ago, I started talking about the National Defense Authorization Act. How the cowardly House of Representatives held votes where they overwhelmingly supported this, and basically, and I'll get into it, but basically taking away your Fifth and your Sixth Amendment rights. They voted on it twice when you weren't paying attention, at an odd time. The Senate voted at a odd time early in December, overwhelmingly voting for this Defense Authorization Act. And then the president said he wasn't going to sign it, and then he said he would sign it with reservations. And when does he sign it? And probably the most cowardly act I have seen by an elected politician, by a president. Cowardly, with a capital C. This guy signed the bill late on New Year's Eve, right about the time you were cracking your first cold Bud Light. Cowardly. I'll explain why they do the things they do as we continue. I'm Darryl Parks, in for Doc Thompson. Darryl Parks, essential employee. 17 after 9, 700 WLW. Fox 19 Storm Tracker forecast from meteorologist Katie Morgan for today. Looks like snow showers, breezy, very cold comparative to where it's been the last number of weeks. High today is going to be 28, but temperatures slowly falling throughout the day. A slight snow accumulation. Just looking out the bunker window here, we have accumulation, and it's sticking to the roads and also sticking to the grass. For tonight, cloudy, a few snow flurries, Arctic blast. Wind chills in the single digits, a low of 16. And as the non-essential employees become essential again for tomorrow, cloudy skies turning partly sunny, still a bit breezy with a high of 25. Looking ahead later in the week, temperatures back up into the mid-40s. 24, snowing, 700 WLW if you're going to be traveling. And especially traveling up toward the Great Lakes, traveling up to the northern parts of Indiana and southwestern Michigan or northeastern Ohio, Pennsylvania, northwestern Pennsylvania or western New York. Getting ready for about 8 to 12 inches of lake effect snow. That's what happens this time of the year. It isn't pretty up in those areas if it's a warm winter and the first cold blast comes in January because Lake Erie is not frozen over. Lake Erie is still relatively warm, and obviously Lake Michigan never freezes over. So this time of the year, get ready for it. Well, back in May, right before Memorial Day weekend, it was on May 26th of 2011. And the reason I say I point out Memorial Day weekend, it was right around the time you were getting prepared to cook up some hot dogs, cook up some hamburgers, you're icing down the beer for the long Memorial Day weekend. The House of Representatives voted for the National Defense Authorization Act, 75% to 25%. So overwhelmingly, while you weren't paying attention. And the reason they voted for this while you weren't paying attention, there are a number of different problems with this bill that according to many constitutional scholars, violate your civil rights. Basically, what ends up happening in this bill is the United States of America geographically is declared a war zone. All right? It's a theater of war. The other things that are spelled out in this National Defense Authorization Act is number one, your right to a speedy trial is being taken away should you be picked up, which brings us to being picked up. Now you can be picked up for no reason. For instance, me being a loudmouth today, talking on 50,000 watts of the Sacred Nation station, someone could say, Darryl Parks is a loudmouth. Darryl Parks needs to be shut up. So, military, go and pick up Darryl Parks. So they can pick me up, put me in jail for no reason, hold me there until the end of conflict. The problem being, conflict is not defined. All right, there's a lot of ambiguity in this, in what's happening with this National Defense Authorization Act. Democratic Senator Carl Levin out of Michigan was a very outspoken proponent of this, as was John McCain, Republican senator from Arizona. So once this was voted on by the House of Representatives, it went to the Senate. And the Senate overwhelmingly approved this, 93 to 7. 93% to 7%, or 93 senators to 7 senators. That happened late in the evening on December 1st of 2011. Then the reconciliation bill went back to the House of Representatives. As a collective body, they approved this by a margin of 68%, saying aye. Again, at a time you weren't paying attention. It happened on December 15th in the evening. All the while this debate was going on, President Barack Obama said he would not sign it, and if these provisions were in there, he's going to veto it. Somewhere after December 15th, the president said, well, yeah, I'll sign it. So, from December 15th through, and it had to be signed by January 1st or prior to January 1st, I'm thinking to myself, when is he going to sign this? Is he going to sign it on maybe Christmas Eve? Is he going to sign it last week? People were back to work on Tuesday and Wednesday. I mean, when is he going to sign this? Saturday night, late. Word first broke of him signing this about 7:30, 8 o'clock. Just about the time families were gathering for a New Year's Eve celebration, or maybe you were getting ready, taking a shave, taking a shower, getting ready to go out to dinner. Maybe you were out at an early party when no one was paying attention, including the media. Cowardly. Now, the reason votes are taken as they were with this bill, and the reason it was signed into law so late Eastern time, now, in defense, it's 6 hours earlier in the day in Hawaii where the president signed this, before someone brings that up, but it was still about 7 o'clock Eastern time. And let's call it what it is. Where is the media headquartered in this country? Where do the vast majority of people live in this country? They live in the Eastern and Central time zones. They live east of the Mississippi. That is where the population center of this country is. And it was signed, and it was calculated to be signed that late in the evening for a reason. On New Year's Eve. So the media wouldn't pick up on it, nor would you know what was happening. When the clock struck midnight, your world changed. We became the United, and look, if you've been listening to me for years, you know I'm not a conspiracy nut. I try to think, I try to see the good in things, but this one stinks. And we became the United Police States of America. If you head to my blog at 700WLW.com, and believe me, I have everything that you need to know there. I have the tallies of the 3 votes, the 1 in the Senate, the 2 in the House, that show which representatives and which senators said yay or aye or voted no. I have the complete list. I also have links to both the Senate bill and the House bill. They're basically the same, but the Senate bill and the House bill. And do yourself a favor and just go and look over the documents. The sections you need to pay attention to in this bill, because it's hundreds of pages, is Section 1021, which I'll explain here coming up, and also Sections 1031 and 1032. These are the sections that violate your 5th, 6th, and for legal purposes, the 14th Amendment as well, which I'll explain. This is the most cowardly behavior of our government that I have seen in my lifetime. It's incredible. And you have to ask the question, why are they so? Why was this? Why did this pass with such bipartisan support? And why were these sections fought for to be included in this defense spending bill? 513-749-7000, 1-800-THE-BIG-1, pound 700 on AT&T. I'm Darryl Parks. Essential. 700 WL. 700 WLW. I'm Darryl Parks. First day of the working new year. And a day of change is more. And I hope our world doesn't change like I'm thinking it's going to change. When you see individuals grabbing at power, meaning those in the House of Representatives, those in the Senate, the president grabbing at powers, and violating your right. You know, here's one of the most insidious things about this. The president, upon signing this, he and you know what? I mean, it's funny because I had a couple of people email it. Well, Darryl, he put a letter, a memorandum to his signing of this bill, and it goes on and on and on. I mean, it's paragraph after paragraph. But I'll just pull out one quote here. Moreover, I want to clarify that my administration will not authorize the indefinite military detention without trial of American citizens. Indeed, I believe that doing so would break our most important traditions and values as a nation. My administration will interpret Section 1021 in a manner, 1021 in a manner that ensures that any detention it authorizes complies with the Constitution, the laws of war, and with other applicable law. End quote. Now, as you know, the president is an attorney and went to Harvard Law School. He knows full well that whatever he puts, whatever letter, memorandum goes with his signing of this bill is purely cosmetic. Cosmetic at best. The Constitution, let me quote here, the Constitution does not authorize the president to use signing statements to circumvent any validity enacted congressional laws, nor does it authorize him to declare he will obey such laws or parts thereof. When a bill is presented to the president, the Constitution, Article 2, allows him three choices. The first, do nothing. The second, sign the bill. Or the third, if he disapproves, use his veto power. Whatever he writes in a letter or a signing statement or a memorandum has no bearing on anything when it comes to the legality of that bill. Zero. Nothing. So what happened was, in this bill, what was fought for, and I've questioned, the one person I keep focusing on is John McCain, an individual that spent years as a political prisoner, an individual that knows the horrors of war and being a prisoner of war, an individual that knows what it's like to be tortured and to be crippled because of that torture. He was outspoken for this. He wanted this. He was one of the 93 senators that voted yes to approve it. Why? Why is an awfully a big word, and it's a powerful word too. And one of the things that as in life, not to get into a preaching monologue here, but if you ever wonder, when things just are confusing to you, ask why. It's a powerful word. Why? So I question what John McCain or Carl Levin out of Michigan, or Gene Schmidt, who voted thumbs up on it, or Steve Shabbat, who voted thumbs up on it, or Mitch McConnell, who said yes, or the 2 senators from Ohio that voted yes, and the 2 senators from Indiana that voted yes. What do they know? What are they trying to prevent in this country? Where you, because of being, if you're outspoken and you're viewed as a author, how do they put it? Associated force, which is undefined in this bill. And you are viewed as a terrorist basically because you're outspoken. That you could be picked up. The military could come, knock on your door and say, let's go. Or if you're driving down the street, the military could stop you, pull you out of your car, and take you away. You could be put into prison until the end of conflict, which is not defined, which means you could be put away for a long, long time, maybe forever. Associated force, as far as terrorism, is not defined. The end of conflict is not defined. What they are saying in this bill is that the United States, the current administration and future administrations, could consider our country in a state of war. That we're always going to be in a state of war. And for that matter, if you're outspoken and you're considered a threat, you could be taken away. That's what this bill does. That's what was signed into law when you weren't paying attention on New Year's Eve. Rich writes to D. Parks at 700WLW.com. He says, that's right, terrible. And the cowards did it on New Year's Eve. Whenever that happens, they are always up to no good. Look for the black cars to be parked in the parking garage when you come out of the elevator. 18 minutes in front of 10 o'clock. I'm Darryl Parks. 513-749-7000. 1-800-THE-BIG-1. And pound 700 on AT&T should a line become available. I have a traffic note for you here. Eastbound 275 is shut down at Ward's Corner, so try to avoid that area if you're headed toward there on the interstate, the outer belt. Roads are going to be getting slippery, and ice is going to be building up, especially on overpasses, because the salt was not put down overnight and wasn't put down early this morning as the snow started to fall. 700 WLW. Yeah, Bengals back into the playoffs. Ravens beat them 24-16 at Paul Brown Stadium yesterday afternoon. Bengals move on to take on Houston in the wild card round of the NFL playoffs. And the Houston game is going to be a 4:30 kickoff in Houston. Our coverage starts early on Saturday. Are we starting at am I getting kicked off the air on Saturday? Ken Brew going to be sitting here? I don't know. We haven't had, I don't know the schedule yet. But anyway, it's a 4:30 kickoff, and we'll have coverage all day long here on 700 WLW. The Steelers take on the Broncos, and that's going to be the Sunday game. The Ravens, by the way, get a pass. They get the first round bye. In college basketball last night, UC winners over Pitt. The final score there was 66 to 63. And that starts the Big East season. And bowl action today. A lot of college bowl games today, including Ohio State taking on Florida in the Urban Bowl. And that is coming up, what is that, a 1 o'clock kickoff this afternoon? It's one of the early bowl games. 513-749-7000, 1-800-THE-BIG-1, talking about the National Defense Authorization Act that violates your rights, including 2 in the Bill of Rights. And Trent writes to D. Parks at 700WLW.com. He says, Darryl, Happy New Year. Steve Shabbat was interviewed by Brian Thomas on 55 KRC a few weeks ago. He claimed he would not vote for the bill when it came back to the House after leaving the Senate. as the Senate added the detention language after the House's initial vote. Well, let's see here. How did Steve Chabot vote? The vote, the second vote, the reconciliation vote in the House of Representatives took place at exactly 6:58 p.m. on December 14th of 2011. Let's go down to Ohio, shall we, and see how our representatives voted in the Buckeye State. District number 1, Ohio. Steve Chabot. Aye. How about Gene Schmidt? Aye. Mike Turner. Aye. Jim Jordan. Aye. Wow. Incredible. By the way, John Boehner doesn't vote because he's the House. He can, but if he needs to, but he's House Speaker, so that's why he hasn't gone on record in regards to this. All right, Brian is on a cell phone. Brian, how are you? Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year. I'm doing all right. I was calling about how you were talking about the bill and everything that just got passed, and how if you're labeled a terrorist, that they can just lock you up without a trial or without anything, indefinitely. And my belief, and I've been thinking this for a while, is that we all know that our government is flawed, but if someone were to come along, whether it's a prominent individual or a group of individuals or something that would, I don't want to necessarily say like a coup d'etat type thing, but if there were some people that were coming across, for strong reform of the government, maybe getting rid of things, changing things in a drastic way, they could just lump you as a terrorist because you're arguing against the government, and we'll just lock you up, if you try to change the way things are right now.
So this government and the United States of America has lasted since almost 300 years, and now they're worried about a coup.
Well, the thing is a lot of our foundations, were in a non-technological society. Nowadays, I predict within the next 10 years or so that voting could almost become like a Twitter event. You could have votes every day on your cell phone while you're driving to work. The president's got a problem. What do I do? And then all of a sudden you've got, millions and millions of your voters and your citizens that have instantaneous access to decisions, where before that wasn't the case.
Brian, are you in Ohio?
Yes.
Okay. You know why that's never going to happen? Because if, you would agree with me that technology allows for firmer control of voting, right? A better accounting.
It doesn't allow for it allows for an easier way of communication.
Yeah, but with technology, we could, it would be to me, it would be a better control. We live in a state where we used to have the Chads, right? The punch things. Yeah. And now it's like doing an SAT test or one of those aptitude tests. We have to fill in the block.
Yeah.
That's how technology is being embraced by those who are running the elections or those who are interested in political life. Go back to the most basic ways of counting votes. We have to fill in a block on a piece of paper. Brian, have a happy New Year. I appreciate the call. TJ and Dave and Mike, and one open line for you at 513-749-7000. I'm Darryl Parks, 700 WLW. Snow coming down. This is probably the first measurable snow we've had since February. All right, learn how to drive again. Roads are getting slick. Eastbound 275 is shut down at Ward's Corner. I'm Darryl Parks at 5 minutes in front of 10 o'clock, 513-749-7000, 1-800-THE-BIG-1, pound 700 on AT&T. A couple of things that are also off on a tangent from this authorization bill, this defense spending bill, the writ of habeas corpus, which basically means you can't be held for no reason. That goes back, you know how far that goes back? That goes back to British common law. That goes back to Spanish-speaking nations, and it goes back to Spain. That's how long that goes. That's what happened with that bill. And then we have the Posse Comitatus Act, which was passed in, I want to say, late 1870s. I want to say 1878. It was part of the Reconstruction after the Civil War. And the intent was to prohibit local governments from using military to enforce laws. All right. Now, if you do a quick read on it, the U.S. Army and the U.S. Air Force are both addressed in this later on, obviously, with the U.S. Air Force. And there is no restriction to the National Guard. And the Navy and the Marine Corps both prohibit themselves from participating in this. See here, U.S. Coast Guard operates now under the Department of Homeland Security, and that's not covered by the Posse Comitatus Act. So, and one of the other things in this bill is the National Guard to become part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's buried somewhere in the bill as well. To call Rain, here is Dave, 700 WLW.
I wanted to say thank you for covering this extremely important topic. America does not know what's actually in this. 1021 actually gives the president the right to imprison people. Section 1022 actually gives him the unlimited right to control the military anywhere, including on U.S. soil.
Right, and that's de facto, as I mentioned, making the United States a war zone.
Yes, sir.
Geographically, yeah.
And then Section 1031, which you mentioned, is the section which actually eliminates the 1878 bill,
right,
the Posse Comitatus, which enables the military to actually arrest and detain people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this should absolutely scare every American. Even the ACLU has gone completely ballistic on this issue. I don't normally agree with the ACLU very much, but this one bill is so dangerous. Hitler would be doing backflips if he had something like this.
Go back and look at the history of Germany after World War I. There were laws such as this passed.
Yes.
Remember the president of Germany when he left? It was what was his name?
Wilhelm.
Who was it?
His name was Wilhelm, Kaiser Wilhelm.
Yeah, and anyway, and then Hitler took over and left the office of president vacant.
Yes.
Yeah. And these laws were passed. I want to say there was a law in Germany passed in I'm going to have to go and look this up, but 1933.
Yes, it's the Reichstag fire.
Correct.
This is basically our Reichstag fire, because what you have to understand is this gives unlimited power. No other president in this whole entire country's history has ever had the power that this is going to give this man.
Yep.
I really mean this to the nth degree.
Hey, look, it's not only President Obama, because at this point I'm feeling he's a one-term president, but this is also future administrations. Dave, have a happy New Year. We continue. This is the home of the best Bengals coverage, 700 WLW. But here we are now. You have individuals going out of their way. These are people in Congress. These are not stupid people. Probably the vast majority of people in Congress are attorneys. They know what's going on. They know what the law states. They know what the articles of the Constitution are all about. They know what the meaning behind them. You don't have to be the head of the Harvard Law Review like the president at one point to understand what he was signing. And then just trying to make it sound good. Look, and I'm never going to, I promise my administration will never do this. Well, what you're admitting to then, you're admitting to what I'm talking about today and what many other people have talked about. You're admitting to it being true. If you're saying, don't worry about it, I'm never going to do it, well, you're admitting there's a problem. You're admitting there are issues with the constitutionality of this law and some of the clauses in these laws. And look no further for evidence than when the bill was signed into law. in the evening on December 31st of 2011, when the media wasn't paying attention, when people were getting together to celebrate the coming of the new year, when people had their attentions diverted to something else, and in this case, the celebration of New Year's. I have a traffic note for you, the Big Mac Bridge. A lot of ice on that bridge. Salt has been put down, but it's icing up. And not only the Big Mac Bridge, be careful on any of the bridges, because those are going to freeze up first with this light snowfall that we've had here in the tri-state area. So watch out on 471 and the Big Mac Bridge. 20 in front of 11, 700 WLW. 700 WLW. Bengals in the playoffs. Wild card weekend. They play kickoff scheduled for 4:30 on Saturday. They play in Houston against the Texans. You'll hear that game here on the big one. 700 WLW. Final score yesterday was 24-16. Also in college basketball, the start of the Big East season for UC as they beat Pitt last night 66-63. Today, College Bowl Day. You have a number of bowls, including Ohio State University playing Florida. Ohio State University fans. On Saturday, when UC beat an SEC team, how many bowl wins does Ohio State University have against the SEC? Just asking. And this just out on ProFootballTalk.com. I made this prediction a number of weeks ago. Mike Florio has put out his list of award winners, one of those being Offensive Rookie of the Year. He picks Andy Dalton as number 2 behind Cam Newton. Are you ready for this? Executive of the Year, winner, Mike Brown. He says by picking receiver A.J. Green in round 1 and quarterback Andy Dalton in round 2, Brown landed a cornerstone combination that should fuel the passing game for years to come. And by fleecing the Raiders for a first-round pick and a second-round pick in exchange for rights to a quarterback who never would play again for the Bengals, Brown put himself in a position to lay the foundation for a bright future. Oh my. Here we go. The Bengals. The future looking bright. Doug in Columbus, 700 WLW.
Hey, Darryl. You know what they say about a broken clock, though. It's at least right twice a day.
Come on, be positive. Hey, they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm happy for you guys there. But, hey, I couldn't agree more with you on your statement about these elected officials. They're not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing, Darryl, and voting for this act. And that's what even makes them more dangerous. I had to finally come to realize that that's the truth. They know what they're doing, and if that's the case, they are doing this on purpose to erode our rights, Darryl.
I think I've talked about this for a number of weeks, and I think they know something that we don't know. And I hate to go over the top on this, but when you look at society in this country, we live under this false security that everything's always going to be okay. The BP gas station outside our window here is always going to be open and filled. The in-ground tanks are always going to be filled with gas. That Kroger in Columbus or Kroger in Cincinnati is always going to have milk on the shelves. And that society will always survive. You have to look no further than a few years ago, about 6 years ago, in the city of New Orleans when Katrina hit that city. Society became unraveled in less than 24 hours.
Yes,
and if they are trying to protect themselves, they are trying to protect their power, and they are trying to protect their wealth. If that's what this is about, if society does indeed come unraveled. We came very close. I had no idea in the fall of 2008 how close the economy and how close our country came to changing forever. I had no idea. I don't know if you did. I mean, but, we were reading about it, certainly as the news started breaking about the economy and the banking system and the failing banks and AIG and go right down the list. Mm-hmm. But I had no idea how close we were. And, after the fact, I go and I start researching a lot of this, and it's scary stuff. And if it happens again, it's going to be ugly.
We're closer now, Darryl, with the fall of the European Union over there,
Yeah.
It's going to affect us tremendously. But, you had a caller who just said, question the Republican candidates. Ron Paul is the only man who has spoken out against this amongst those guys. And Chuck Baldwin, who ran as a constitutional candidate in 2008, wrote a great article about Ron. And, over in Chuck Baldwin now is running for the lieutenant governor in Montana, where he moved. But they are setting up to recall their congressman who voted for this act. When these people do that, that is a direct violation of their oath of office, because this comes contrary to their oath to uphold the Constitution.
Correct.
And we need to, all states need to do this to their elected officials who voted for that. But,
well, Doug, how many times have you read the Constitution?
No, all the way through, none. But I'm aware of it. Yeah.
Well, okay, but I mean, even if you go and you look, you look at certain, you look at the Bill of Rights. Just read the Bill of Rights. I mean, it doesn't take a constitutional scholar to understand its meaning.
That's right.
It's not written in fancy legalese where you look at it and you're confused.
Correct. A law that requires interpretation from a legal expert is not a good law.
That's a great point. That is
plain and simple.
That is a wonderful point. Well, this is a frightening time, as you may have heard Republican Senator Lindsey Graham say, when, if somebody is picked up and somebody says they want a lawyer, his quote is, "Shut up, you don't get a lawyer."
Sounds bad, Darryl.
And that is indeed frightening. Let's go to Sam here. Sam, you're on a cell phone. You're on the big one. What's going on, Sam?
Hey, Darryl. I think you may have went off the deep end. You know why?
Why is that, Sam?
I think you're either trying to stir up trouble or conspiracy nut. But I think you're trying to stir up trouble, because if you took this serious, you wouldn't come in with this sports crap and then back and forth. You'd stick on one subject. But maybe you're just not that smart to stick on one subject. So I'm beginning to think that, you used to say...
Hey, Sam.
Yes, sir.
Have you ever worked in radio?
Have I ever worked in radio?
Yes or no?
Have you ever had a real job and did something besides work for the New World Order?
Sam, have you ever worked in radio? You going to answer my question?
I think you're out here to get people to call up to say crap. No,
Sam, my job is to create discussion, and my job is to follow a format, Sam. That's my job.
The New World Order.
New World Order.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to bring up the Bilderbergs, are you?
No, you're a conspiracy nut. You're a conspiracy nut, though.
Okay.
Yeah, well, let me ask you a question.
Let me ask you a question, and then he hangs up. As you know, the rule of the program is if you hang up, you lose. Let me ask you a question and hang up. That's a first. 700 WL. That may end up being rule number 6. If you hang up, you lose. I may put that up on the website. 6 minutes in front of 11. I'm Darryl Parks. 513-749-7000, 1-800-THE-BIG-1, pound 700 on AT&T, should a line become available. Hello, Sandra. How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Essential Darryl.
Essential employee.
That's right, you are. I'd just like to say that Section 1031 of that bill says that you can be arrested and sent to Guantanamo if you're merely belligerent. And I think I would be considered belligerent right now. And maybe some of you will have to be visiting me in Guantanamo, if that's at all possible.
Well, I often think I may be in the cell right next to you there, Sandra.
Well, I guess we can commiserate with each other then, because this bill is absolutely dangerous. It's not conspiracy. In fact, I believe that it's proved that some of us that have been believing some of these things were going on are absolutely true.
Yeah.
When 93 out of 100 senators vote for a bill like this, you have to wonder what is going on. And the outcome of this could be martial law. I mean, when you mention posse comitatus, I mean, what's the next step? Martial law. That means we're all under government control, like it's never happened before.
Well, the thing that's dangerous to me, that seems dangerous to me in this is how things are not defined. You know, if you're considered an associate force, it is not defined. As far as a conflict or war, that is not defined as well. See, these are not dumb people. The people that script this, the people that author these bills and put these bills into legalities, they know exactly what they're doing.
Well, most of them are lawyers anyway.
Of course.
So they write it in legalese. They write 1,000 or more pages that nobody's going to read. And either they know something really, really horrible that we don't know anything about, which I think that would have spilled out sooner or later. This is coming to a head, what people have been fearing for some time.
Well, Sandra, there is something that is behind this. There is something that, and look, as opposed to the last caller there, I'm not a conspiracy nut, but there's a reason people fight or people go out of their way or are so outspoken like Lindsey Graham, hey, look, if you're picked up, too bad, shut up and you don't get a lawyer. I mean, Lindsey Graham's not a dumb guy. This is a smart politician. He's been in office for years and years. This is his profession, being a politician.
Right.
He knows what's going on. So what is the driving force behind this? What is the driving force of someone like John McCain, who should implicitly know what it's like to be a political prisoner? What is the driving force behind this? Because John McCain, if anyone should be an opponent of this, it's John McCain. He spent years as a political prisoner as a prisoner of war in Vietnam.
Well, and think about how he went on and on about waterboarding before, and now all of a sudden, American citizens who just are belligerent are free game for the government to arrest and throw into a prison. This seems a little bit strange that they aren't informing the public. And they're labeling people. Last night, Leslie Stahl was doing an interview, and she was calling the Tea Party people all kinds of negative names. I mean,
but Sandra, this goes beyond politics. I have, as you know, for years I have said you can't trust either side. And what's happening here now is you have the sides coming together, as I've said. They're coming to, and they're voting 93% to 7 for bills like this in the Senate. By the way, the one senator in our region that voted no, Rand Paul. He's the only one. Both senators from Ohio voted yes. Both senators from Indiana voted yes. And Mitch McConnell voted yes in the Commonwealth. It's a minute before 11 o'clock. We'll check out the weather forecast on this wintry January day. This is the home of the best Bengals coverage, 700 WLW. Frank on a cell phone, 700 WLW.
Good morning, Darryl. I was wondering, now that we are all in a war zone, are we eligible to plead to the UN or to NATO or to The Hague in Geneva for some special, war relief?
Possibly. What are you looking for? Some rice, maybe? What? Wheat? What are you? Medical supplies? What?
I don't know. I'm really not inclined to ask for any assistance necessarily, but I'm just wondering if that option if technically we are now in a war zone, if that would apply if things get really desperate or critical. Does that option possibly exist?
Yeah, possibly. Possibly. I can see an airlift.
Yeah, or if we need help in, actually building our literal bunkers, not just figurative ones.
You have never been in our studio, Frank. It is truly a bunker. Oxford, here is Eula, 700 WLW.
The representatives, John Boehner can't vote, but Senator Reid does, because there were 100 votes. And I was wondering why he can vote and the House, the Speaker can't vote.
What are you talking about, Eula? The votes on these bills?
Yes.
Yeah, the Speaker could be there as a tiebreaker, but he normally doesn't vote.
Yeah, I know he's a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
But looks like if the Senate Majority Leader could vote, the House, the Speaker of the House could.
Yeah, I'm following you there, but there was no reason for John Boehner to vote. And if I were John Boehner, as far as voting on this bill, I wouldn't want to vote for it.
I know.
All right, so he's kind of like the Speaker of the House, but he's standing off at the side. And if he's ever called on it, hell, I didn't vote for it. I mean, Michelle Bachmann voted for it the first time in May, but she didn't vote for it this time in December.
I just didn't think it was fair that the Senate majority leader could vote.
Yeah.
I know the vice president breaks that tie, but still, I don't think he should vote.
Well, that's the way the Constitution says they vote there,
I know. And also the president, he lied about signing that. They called these ball players in for lying to the Senate about drugs. Why can't they call the president in for lying about signing the bill?
Well, no, he didn't lie about it. He said he was going to veto it, and then he changed his mind. He did come out and say that he was going to sign it after the House voted for that. But you know what? I'll bring you bring up a great point. You see what they do is they focus on bringing ball players, to use your example, in front of Congress to sit in front of a Senate investigation committee or a House investigation committee. And what they do is they just deal with things that don't matter. How does dragging some ball players in front of the Senate or the House to discuss whether they take drugs and want to harm their bodies, how does that affect you, Eula, in Oxford?
Not a thing.
Doesn't affect me. I can care less if Barry Bonds' head is a size 14.
But looks like they could impeach a president. He's lied before about things.
For instance, what has he lied on?
Well, on the birth certificate, I asked for race.
On the what?
It asks for your race, Caucasian, Negro, or what?
Oh, okay, yeah,
Okay.
African American, Eula.
Well, that's not on. Anyway, he said African, and that is not a race. That is a nationality.
Well, I got you on that. Yeah, I got you on that. Okay.
Okay, that was some of my points.
I understand. You're not saying he was born in Kenya, are you?
His grandmother did. No, but African is not a race, though. See what I mean?
So he lied.
Is
what you're saying?
That's a nationality.
So you want him impeached?
There's several things I think he could have been impeached for, but
Eula, you know what?
What?
Don't worry about impeaching him. He's not going to be elected again in November.
I hope not.
All right. Well,
I didn't vote for him in the first place.
Well, hey, Eula, if it continues the way it's continuing, believe me, whether it's the economy or him signing bills that are against your rights and my rights, he's not going to be elected again. Believe me.
Can the next president repeal this bill?
Well, sure, but he's not.
Okay.
All right. I mean, that's the insidious thing. Have a happy New Year, there, Eula. That's the insidious thing. Even let's say this guy isn't reelected in November. The next president has those same powers. The next president, would he repeal this law? Of course not. Because when they go to office, what do they try to do? When they go into office, number one, I firmly believe they want to get wealthy. And I'm not saying that to make a joke. And then they want to retain power. And that's what this bill is all about. Using an unconstitutional act so they can retain power. That is the insidious nature of this bill. Bob and Anderson, 700 WLW.
Hey, hi. Thanks for taking the call today. Let me get rid of my background noise. I was going to bring attention. You had so many great topics earlier, that constitutional issues, and a lot of us are concerned about Obamacare. Of course, other things are going off the rails too. But the 1792 Militia Act is something that people could or should read. We'd recommend a good summary of that at Gregory2012.com.
Bob, give us the Cliff Notes on this.
Yeah, the Cliff Notes.
We're not here to drive page views on a website.
That's fine, but I'm just, a lot of good information there.
I got it. What's the Cliff Notes on it?
So the Cliff Notes is in 1792, our founding fathers who wrote the Constitution were still around, and they voted affirmative in the 1792 Militia Act to require citizens to have a musket and additional charges because we knew we couldn't, or they thought we couldn't afford to bring up an army at that time. That is what the Supreme Court will decide Obamacare on, whether it's constitutional or not. The interpretation, if it's wide, broad, or versus narrow, because the government did at that time require the citizenry to go out and buy something. Now, I'm not saying I know how the Supreme Court's going to rule. Goodness, nobody does. We all think we know how.
Okay.
But if people want to really study up on what's going to happen later this spring.
So how does this relate back to the National Defense Authorization Act?
The National Defense Authorization Act and many of these new laws all are really, dressing around the table on the Constitution. All of these things, frankly, are not constitutional. We have a Congress that wants to just continue to write things that I'm not going to say they're good or bad. They're wasting their time. They're, doing whatever you want to say into the wind because these things are not constitutional.
No kidding. This one's against the Fifth and Sixth Amendments of the Constitution.
Well,
one of the first 10.
I think what it demonstrates is that we have too many attorneys and too many people in Congress.
Bob.
Yes,
These people, I will agree with you, they are out of touch. These individuals know full well what those two sections, meaning Section 1031 and Section 1032, mean. They know full well how those sections were authored and how those sections have ambiguous definitions. They know full well what it means declaring geographically the United States of America being considered a war zone. They know full well the definition of conflict is not defined. Are we in a war? When does the war end? Are we in a conflict? When does the conflict end? None of that is spelled out. And what this bill does is, as far as taking a conflict, could state that we're in a war and we're always in a war and we're always going to be in a war. 29 after 11, news time, 700 WLW. 700 WLW, I'm Darryl Parks, in for Doc Thompson. He's back tomorrow. Dan Carroll filling in for Willie. 12:06 today on 700 WLW. Hey, if you friend me on Facebook, you could follow along on the show. Facebook.com/Darryl Parks, DARRYLPARKS. Comments on this and comments on, I'm sorry I was right about New Year's. I got a lot of hate email about Dick Clark looking copper this year. Not good. Anyway, friend me on Facebook, Facebook.com/Darryl Parks. Join thousands upon thousands of people. Well, the president expressed misgivings about several provisions of this sweeping defense bill he signed into law in a cowardly fashion on Saturday night, pledging that his administration will use broad discretion in interpreting the measure's legal requirements to ensure the U.S. citizens suspected of terrorism are not detained indefinitely by military. The president said he does not agree with everything contained in the bill, but with military funding due to expire on Monday, Obama said he signed the bill after Congress made last-minute revisions at the request of the White House before approving it 2 weeks ago. In several cases, the president called those changes, quoting, minimally acceptable, and he vowed to use discretion when applying the provisions. He says, I have signed this bill despite having serious reservations with certain provisions that regulate the detention, interrogation, and prosecution of suspected terrorists. I want to clarify that my administration will not authorize the indefinite military detention without trial of American citizens. Indeed, I believe that doing so would break with our most important traditions and values as a nation. Let me go back there to one of the things he said. I want to clarify that my administration, you see the next administrations to follow that administration, He's only talking about his. But the other administrations to come, well, no one's talking about what they may do. The president said his administration would seek to repeal any provisions that are inconsistent with his values, and added that he would reject any approach that would mandate military custody where law enforcement provides the best method of incapacitating a terrorist threat. So he's admitting this violates our rights. He signs into law something that is unconstitutional. He's admitting it in a roundabout way. He's going to look for. This is going to be like OJ looking for the killers. You know, if I find anything that's inconsistent, well, I'm going to call those people in Congress and get this thing repealed. 513-749-7000. Let's head to Lebanon. Here's David. David, you're on the big one.
Hi, Darryl. Thanks. Great show today.
Thank you.
I just wanted to weigh in just a little bit here. Under this act, I haven't heard this spoken yet, that under the Defense Act, he can declare martial law, and any president can do that under our Constitution. So what describes whether we're in a time of war in this country or...
well, what this bill does is declare the United States a war zone.
That's correct. And under a war zone, any president can declare martial law.
Correct.
Which, at that point, elections are held at bay.
Oh, you mean calling off elections?
That's correct.
I got you. I see where you're going with it. Well,
so I know people will call me crazy, but under our Constitution, that is stated that way.
Yeah. Well, David, have a happy New Year, buddy.
You do the same.
All right, I'm just going to give you a warning as we move on here into 2012. Just watch what you say, okay?
I know it. They can come in and knock on your door or stop you wherever they feel they want to do that. So.
David, they know you live in Lebanon, Ohio now.
That's correct, Darryl. We'll have to watch out, won't we?
All right, buddy. Happy New Year.
You do the same.
Take care. 20 minutes in front of 12. I'm Darryl Parks, 700 WL. Bengals are 3-point underdogs in the game against Houston on Saturday afternoon. It's the wild card weekend coming up in the NFL. The Bengals making the playoffs for the third time in just a few years. That's pretty good. 4:30, the kickoff. Our coverage is going to start about 9:06 on Saturday morning here on 700 WLW. Final score last night, by the way, was 24-16 with the Ravens winners. UC over Pitt in college basketball last night. There was a game. Beginning of the Big East season. 66-63, the final score there. Bengals line with Lance McAllister and Dave Lapham tonight, 6:06 here on 700 WLW. One of the things I like to do is I like to look into various newspapers on the first of the year to see the first babies born. And the reason I look is I always try to find out, because overwhelmingly the couples the baby is born to, normally they're not married. So I just went and looked at a handful this morning. There was a Chelsea McClure born on New Year's morning in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania. The baby weighed in at 7 pounds, 15 ounces. Sierra Emma Rose Bard. Oh, I'm sorry. Chelsea is the mom. So Sierra Emma Rose Bard. Mom Chelsea is 19. This is her second child. And this one was fathered by her boyfriend, Jonathan Bard. Good grief. Let's see here. A little girl weighing 8 pounds, 10 ounces, Washington, D.C., Greg Bonifed, and mother Ija Bonifed. Okay. They were married to Taunton, Massachusetts. Let's see here. Nicole Rolls and Justin Bale of Taunton welcomed their son, Jace Bale. He weighed in at 9 pounds. Christiana Louise Hughes. That's a pretty name. Christiana Louise Hughes, born in Shreveport, Louisiana. to a Christine and Reginald Hughes. All right, so they are married. And here in this area, let's see here, firstborn baby of 2012 was born at Bethesda North. Brent and Jackie Jarnicki of South Lebanon. And Jacob Isaac weighed in at 6 pounds, 14 ounces. And where is the one? I had one here where there was no father. I must have misplaced it, but the mother was named. There was a picture of the mother, the baby, and a nurse in the paper. No father named in the article. It was the Immaculate Conception. 513-749-7000 is our number, and to a cell phone here is Tom. 700 WLW. What's up, Tom?
Well, this is actually Mr. X, because I can no longer give out my real name because, well, you know, they're listening. But I have a question for you.
But Tom?
Yes?
Here's the bad part. If you're going to call yourself Mr. X,
yes,
I have your caller ID.
Oh, that's all right. You can have it, but, you know, it's one of those disposable throwaway phones.
I got you, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, and you shouldn't be calling yourself by your real name. You should be Mr. P or something. Because
all right.
they'll still storm the station and cut the cables and everything. You know how that goes. But my question is this, and it's the one I've always wondered about. Why is it when they really think the people are behind them on signing a bill that we have all kinds of press coverages, we have pens being handed out, and everybody standing there clapping and looking like Nancy Pelosi, you know, cheering and everything, but then they do something they don't think we're going to like, and, well, we read about it in the paper the next morning.
Well, they bury it at times when the media is not paying attention, or more importantly, the people aren't paying attention to it because it's a controversial bill, and they don't want the media attention. That's why.
I know. They're trying to hide it. I mean,
Tom, I started today's show off calling it cowardly. It is a cowardly act. They voted originally, the House of Representatives, right before Memorial Day weekend on the original bill, and then the Senate bill and the... What are you doing?
Me?
What's the squeaking?
Oh, just a radar detector.
Okay. And then the Senate bill and the reconciliation bill were voted after hours. And then the president, you know, I was thinking, you know, when this bill was voted on December 14th, the final House bill, I thought, well, when's the president going to sign this? And I thought to myself, he's not going to sign this on Christmas Eve. And then I thought I was still thinking good, and I was thinking positive that he was going to sign it at some point last week, not on a Saturday night.
Well, they do this all the time. People, you know, they need to watch what they do to understand what they're doing. When they know it's not right, they know it's under the table, they'll do it under the table so you don't know, and they keep doing it. And my only other question is this. I guess since now they can consider it a war zone, are they going to mass troops in Cincinnati when they open the trolley and run it through over the Rhine?
We'll have the National Guard protecting the trolley as it heads up to Findlay Market.
I mean, you're going to need it. I mean, come on. That'd be considered a war zone, wouldn't it? Maybe that's why they did it.
You know, history repeats itself here. Remember, there years ago, Main Street was going great guns. There were individuals making private investments to Main Street to create an entertainment district. Hell, they even built a parking ramp there. And all it took was one musician to get shot in the back of the head. And that was it. Kill the whole area. And I fear the same thing is going to happen with the trolley.
Exactly.
Once it's running, it's just going to take one killing at one of these trolley stops or one killing on one of these trolley cars, and that will be the end of the trolley.
Well, that's if you can get a rider on it. That's the first place. I mean, you have to have someone standing there. That may be the first problem they have, but if they actually do, you're probably right.
No, they're going to be. Look, there'll be people that ride it. It's not going to be the problem with it. It's not going to be the amount of people they're forecasting to ride that trolley. It's not going to happen. There aren't enough people in downtown Cincinnati living to make regular use of riding that trolley. There was an article in the paper last week of one of the big proponents of the trolley system, and he lives downtown, he works downtown, and to his point, he said, hey, I'm going to ride this. Well, you know, if you live downtown and you work downtown, God bless you, go ride it. But the problem is the vast majority of people in Cincinnati now live in the suburbs. The city of Cincinnati at its high point had about 500,000 plus people living in the city of Cincinnati. Today, the population of the city of Cincinnati is about 270,000 people. The problem is the infrastructure in the city of Cincinnati is built for 600,000 people, not the 270,000 that now live there. That's fact. You know, people live in Anderson. People live in Westchester. People live in Fairfield. people live in Mason. They live in Loveland. That is fact. Thus the problem of the forecast of the amount of people riding the trolley. Sadly, it's not going to work. 9 before 12 on the big one. I'm Darryl Parks, essential employee. 700 WLW. 700 WLW. If you're heading southbound on 75 about a mile south of Dry Ridge, there's a 30-car pileup. Roads are slick this morning, so keep that in mind in your travels. And as people on the radio are one to say, allow some extra travel time. 513-749-7000, the number here. And Price Hill, Nick, you're on the big one.
Good morning. I didn't want to slow you down, but do you know what a severance clause is, or can you explain it? Or
the who?
There's a thing that it was a big deal when the Democrats failed or neglected to enter a severance clause into the health care bill, is what I'd heard. And the beauty of that is that if any one piece of the bill gets voted down, the whole bill gets voted down. Now, I'm wondering if the NDAA has one of those, or if somebody got lucky and didn't let that get stuck in.
You know, Nick, I'd have to do some research on that. I don't know.
It's a backdoor way, but otherwise, the Supreme, one of those three pieces of the Constitution gets voted bad, they can still keep the other two.
Okay, well, I'll do some research on that, Nick, all right?
I appreciate it. Sorry to slow you.
Well, that's okay. That's what we're here for. Have a little discourse, have a little discussion, and spend some time together on the second day of the year. Got a note here from Dennis D. Parks at 700WLW.com. He says, Darryl, I know this isn't your topic today. If you don't bring it up, I understand. A letter to the editor in this morning's Inquirer read about the post office. It's absurd. It's funny, Dennis. I did cut it out. This family is mailing a Christmas care package to China. Skyline chili, basically, and some barbecue sauce. And they go to UPS, and UPS wants to charge them like $216. And they go to the U.S. Post Office, and the cost of mailing it from here to China with the U.S. Post Office is like $60, $65, something along those lines. And they want to thank the post office for being there so they can mail the Christmas present to China for the $65. They're not thanking the taxpayers for backing up the post office and allowing them to ship the Skyline chili and the barbecue sauce to China. You see, the problem is with UPS, that's the actual cost of shipping the barbecue sauce from Cincinnati to China. It is $216 or whatever that figure was. What's happening with the U.S. Postal Service? They're selling you the postage at a loss. That make any sense? All right. Non-essential employee Doc Thompson will be back tomorrow. I'm Darryl Parks, essential employee, to be followed by essential employee Dan Carroll. On the home of the best Bengals coverage, 700 WL.